All right. Welcome everyone to Handaan, a PT Meal podcast live. So we are live now at in PT Meal Podcast Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And this episode will later be available in your favorite podcast streaming apps. Um, ano ba? So uh, to those who are familiar with PT Meal Podcast, so the regular podcast, we feature different PTs and their stories and in their individual specialties. So in this segment, yung handaan, it's like any other gathering that we come together and we talk about certain topics. Tapos in this case, we're going to talk about topics related to physical therapy profession and practice. So, tawag dito, today's topic is concerns and issues faced by Filipino physical therapists working and migrating in the Philippines, in the US, sorry. So, yun ang pag-usapan natin. We have guests that we said like spanned um, decades of experience. So, we're going to hear about that. So, I guess we're ready. Let me introduce my guests. Okay, let me introduce my guests. First, they're not new to the podcast. Very suki na. Uh, they're Ben and Maria Aguila. So, hello. Hi, Ben and Maria. So they're power couple, physical therapy power couple, based in Jersey City, New Jersey, right? Practice owners. Ayun. So, welcome back to the podcast and doing live again.
Yes.
All right.
The taon
So,
lang, the other camera isn't working. That's why we're doing this side by side.
okay. All
But
right.
actually, it kind of works.
Well, that's live. All right, but that's okay. Yeah, glad to have you here. Next is a physical therapist in Texas, also not new to the show, Mark Basco. Welcome back.
Hello, thanks for having me.
All right, nice. And ito, bago to the show and first time live din. Uh, Let me welcome Fretchie Garcia Blair. Hi, from Colorado. Hi there, Fretchie.
Hi, Johan. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me.
All right. And last is Emmanuel Malabanan, a physical therapist in Texas as well. Hi, Eman.
Hi, good evening, good morning, wherever you guys are watching.
Right,
So,
right. So, good morning, everyone in the Philippines, and good evening here in the US. So, just to give you a background kung paano nagsimula itong mini group namin to is it started way back in I know way back para tag sobrang tagal na. It was in February in CSM. CSM, the combined sections meeting of the APTA. So we had dinner and we yeah. So we talked about we parang ganito. Over dinner we talked about different topics, with different things about physical therapy and we shared our experiences. And parang that time, parang naisip ko, yung conversation na yun dapat na-share sa ibang tao kasi we're we're only a small group but we have a rich experience, di ba? Na I feel other people could benefit from. So yun. So doon na-conceive yung idea ng handaan. This was supposed to be the first episode of that like roundtable podcast thing eh. So pero due to availability na-push na po. I'm glad na nandito lahat tayo so to share that. So let's probably begin with the conversation with the context na what we were talking about back then. So I'll give the floor to Ben and Maria kasi I think we started that discussion then with your what do you call this? Your talk about cultural um, uh, competency in physical therapy and the stories of internationally educated physical therapists and their and struggles and concerns going here in the US. So let's start probably from there.
I guess the story starts with me. Kasi I was FEU graduate of 99, and I really wanted to immigrate to the US. So I immediately moved after graduating year 2000. And then dumating ako, I went to a particularly harrowing and negative immigrant experience. And then, long story short, I was able to get through it. And fast forward a few years later, napansin ko yung advocacy ko pala is towards helping make it not a bad experience for the people who are after us. And that's why the advocacy for positions within APTA, organizing at the grassroots level, para meron namang kumaga champion at advocate ang mga PT na parating pa lang at andito na to be fully a part of the profession. Pero meron din kasi mga ibang cultural issues on top of that I think Consi really tackles really nicely.
I think on my part, actually, I have several. But although yes, I am an immigrant, of course, but I didn't have to go through the migrating here via work because at that time we were already married. So, but in a way, though, the yung migration ko is actually dependent on him. But mine was different in that I was having a lot of like moral injuries, moral dilemma that I was not able to pinpoint, and I felt like baka ako lang to, baka kasi mahirap lang akong, is it just me making an issue of a lot of like like ethical concepts ganyan, because in practice, normally it's also I think the immigrants who wala naman tayong masyadong choice kasi when it comes to saan tayo mag-work, diba? I mean, we know that, especially if you're working with an agency. And this is a story that we hear as in till this day, till I
Last
heard
week.
that just last night, So when it comes to that, there are really a lot of issues that I think actually concerns the profession as well, because these are issues that we face from a professional standpoint, diba? So we should not be fighting all these issues actually on our own. Unfortunately, during that time, I know except for Emmanuel, diba? And I think maybe Frenchie, diba? We've been here like 2 decades, such that we still remember the time when we had no community within the APTA. So, and then it wasn't until we actually got involved with the APTA that we realized that, actually we need to be a part of it because it's really a rich resource. Now, the other thing is that I think as a woman, diba, in PT, I also have like different roles and different hats. So my other take is that as a person and also as a mom, I'm raising kids, first generation, Americans. Let's put it that way. And as such, they're all going through, as we are, the what so-called acculturation experiences. So we have the lived experiences, but we don't really have the words for it, diba? Ano ba itong pinagdadaanan namin, diba? So I know, diba, within all of us in this room right now, we went through a lot of those conversations during the night. And I actually just wanted to say, it's not just because I think it was a very enriching experience to share, but I think we really genuinely had fun that night.
Right.
We went through the stages of pagpapaalam Pinoy style. Yung nagpaalam tayo sa loob, tapos lumabas pa, tapos naglakad pa, di ba? Parang ayaw na maghiwa-hiwalay. So, yun, parang, and I'm so happy, by the way, to see you all guys here tonight.
Right. Yo, thank you for opening it up that. So, yun nga, marami tayong napagdadaanan like going here. So let's start probably with Emmanuel. So what was your struggles or challenges when you came here? I don't know how many. I'll leave that to you. Back then.
I actually I migrated to the US to work July of 1988. So, and what could go wrong went wrong when I arrived. And that's not an exaggeration. The original agency that I worked with did not, I was already here, but apparently I didn't have any work, so I had to be resilient and actually be resourceful and find a way to be able to find work within the time frame of that my visa would allow at the time.
Mhm.
So I had that going, and then when I finally did find an employer, then I had to deal with the immigration issues, legal issues. So on top of the acculturation issues that you face every single day, because I was a traveler initially, so and actually I was actually working more so in the South. So, and if for you those, for those in the Philippines that may not be familiar, the South is a very racist region of the United States. So you're always faced with that when I was beginning. So yeah, my it hasn't been a really smooth start for me for the first at least 3 or 4 years or so. You have to deal with the legal stuff on top of being a 22-year-old stupid guy at that point. I didn't really know anything about life at that point. I was just
That's
wide-eyed and bushy-tailed.
experience.
Yeah, but I had to grow up very quickly and learn to navigate through that. So yeah, that's my story from the 1980s. Not to mention, I was probably one of the first few. That was the start of the recruitment from the Philippines to the U.S. So I'm probably one of the first. I would say in the first 2 3 years of that process of bringing people in. So people don't really know what to do with us
Mhm.
still. Yeah,
Right.
but they were bringing on. I mean, I could tell you, I was part of my entire graduating class from UST, the 1987 graduating class. I think about 80% of us actually came to the US by 1989.
Mm.
So
Mhm.
that was the volume of people that you're actually, and that's just one class, one graduating class. So
Mhm.
imagine how many people came along with me.
Mm.
So I would say probably good 60% of the graduates of the Philippines that are practicing in the Philippines were drained out of Manila and the entire Philippines to come over to the United States. So there's repercussions of practice in the Philippines and repercussions of practice here during that time.
So probably that's when the the mass migration started. When you PT migrating became more popular and more popular.
Yeah, and it snowballed from there. It's like more schools were established in the Philippines immediately after that because there is so much need. And you guys are familiar. I mean, particularly Johan, you and I came from the same university. You know very well that from a one class per year, it grew to, I think now what, about 4 or 5 classes graduating each year.
I
Because we
think
have PT,
think so.
OT, and speech now, right? So yeah,
Mhm.
so it has changed because of that migration of people. The practice in the Philippines has changed significantly, and ours here as well. So
So sino yung who helped you out back then when you know migration was new for Filipino PTs? Di ba?
let me not mention names because
I mean, how were you able to navigate that?
actually, I mean, truthfully, when I first heard of practicing in the US, the only reason why I decided to actually pull the trigger, and I'm gonna admit to the fact that at that time I was 22 years old. I don't know anything better. I was just looking for something fun to do, right? And I was like, oh, it would be fun to work. I mean, to move halfway across the world by myself, not knowing anyone, So, and and
Still is.
and I found there was a recruiter in the Philippines that came, and they were like, I was probably one of the spoiled ones because they were actually at the time, they were actually helping us, paying for the processing fee, paying for immigration processing fee, paying for your licensure, even your TOEFL, TSE, and TWE. They were they were responsible for that. So I did not have to pay for my own placement fee at that point. At that point, I
Mhm.
know very well after me, that has been a very different practice. So yeah, so I was one of the first few that was actually recruited and asked to, the United States. So that was that was uh, that was easy from the Philippine side.
Mm-hmm.
The challenge was when you come stateside, and
Mm-hmm.
apparently not everything is they're not as set.
Mm-hmm.
That was my experience, but now I don't think that that was everyone's experience though at the time.
Mm-hmm. All right. How about you, Frenchie? Is it uh, similar or?
Oh no, 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 no. I my coming here, I came here because of love. So I married an American. So that's how I came here. I did not come here through an agency or anything like that. So as far as having a house or a car or having applying credit card, because I know I have friends that went through that. So I didn't have to go through that. So my struggle is different. My struggle was I came here, I wasn't, I did not apply for, PT or, credentialing. So the struggle of trying to get your requirements while you're here, and I don't know about your guys's school or universities, but getting your requirements, it's so hard. So that's one of the struggles. But I think the biggest thing is trying to, it's the confidence. I have to say that not having someone that will mentor you, not having someone or a family or a community that will help you or give you confidence, it's really tremendous to have that. And I didn't have that when I started. And I remember one of my struggles was I did not take the PT, the board examination here in the United States right away. So I came here 2001 and I graduated 1999. So basically I was out of the classroom for 3 years. So I felt like, okay, I can't remember all the theoretical knowledge. So I have to sit down and review. But then at the same time, I was so focused on gaining some experience that I started as a rehab aide here in the United States, a rehab aide, because nobody will accept me. And then at that time, I didn't know how to drive. And I think most people from the Philippines don't know how to drive. And the reality, that's really tough. It's not like Chicago or New York where you have a good public transportation. Here in Colorado, we don't have outstanding public transportation. So my struggle was, I remember when I first started, I have to commute 4 to 5 hours, and it's not an exaggeration. I didn't have a life. I went to bed at 9, woke up at 3 o'clock because I really wanted to have a PT related job, and that was a PT aide. And I remember as a rehab as a rehab aide, you were paid between $9 to $10 an hour. So that was a struggle. But I was so focused on trying to get some PT experience because it was hard. That's the other thing people need to know. It doesn't matter how much experience you have in the Philippines. If you don't have any US experience, it's really difficult. But then what I realized too, even having 3 to 6 months of US experience, it was so much easier to get a job. The other struggle I had was this. Again, I talk about confidence. I was unlucky in a way that I met condescending therapists, and at that time there was a PT assistant that I worked with, and because of her, at that time, I felt like I will never become a PT here in the United States. I didn't feel like I have the knowledge. I didn't feel like I have the skills. With all the experience and the education I got in the Philippines, I didn't feel like it was enough. Because, I don't know about your guys' training, but I've never heard about PT doing TMJ, PT doing lymphedema. And I'm like, oh my God, is this what physical therapy is about here in the US? I don't have those experience. But then again, I was also lucky that the PT, that she was a specialist. She was very supportive of me, and that really helped me. And then the other thing too that I struggle with is I just wish that Filipinos support other Filipinos, especially when you're a newbie, because I've worked with some Filipinos that instead of like teaching you, the right way, like I still remember this to this day that, like having ortho patients. Like I know that you need to have, weight bearing status and you just forgot to write it down. But instead of like, you're from the Philippines, you're both Filipinos. Like instead of like trying to talk to you directly, to guide you, like talking behind you. So those are the struggles. But I think I really believe Filipinos are resilient. I really, really believe that. And luckily, I also have a husband that was very supportive and like a cheerleader. You can do this, that kind of thing. And and then my childhood, my family, like how they raised me, like, you're here, just just bring your head down, work hard, and you're going to be successful. So I brought that with me. And but the confidence didn't come easily. So I really think that the struggle of, like, okay, I'm not good enough, I struggled with that, not having supportive people that could. And then even like because I work in an acute setting, and this is what I love. But I remember when I first started, and it was like I started from I worked from a SNF, or a nursing facility, to acute setting in a hospital, and it's a completely different ball game. But I remember one of the OTs. It was just my first day from from a SNF to a hospital, and then she was already like, "Oh, she's a terrible PT. She doesn't even know this and that." And I've heard about that, and it's like, but you know what though? Like, of course I was hurt, but I was like, you know what? I'm gonna show it to you that I can be good, and that really helped me. But it's, again, struggles, the confidence, people. I'm really glad, meeting Consi and Ben, and having this, internationally educated PTs, like helping people. And I we really, really need that, because I think we're very smart. We have the skills, we have the knowledge, but it's just like it's so easy to feel inferior to
Mhm.
our US counterparts or our US peers. That's my personal experience anyway. So
Mhm.
I'm so glad to met Consi and Ben. I don't know why I've never met these two people before, but it's very inspiring. So I'm really excited. And yeah, so thanks for inviting me. I got to share that struggle. But
Yeah.
you know what? It made me stronger. I really, it's not a cliche, but it did make me stronger,
Mhm.
going through those struggles.
Yeah, and I think that's common experience naman, right? With some of our colleagues talaga that come over here, not knowing anyone. I'm thankful na in my experience, I came to a place where there's a lot of Filipino physical therapists. So I didn't feel na iba ako kasi within our workplace, most of the PTs are Pinoy and they're supportive. No, not like your experience. Sorry to hear that. No, um, Ben, were you about to say something?
No, no, I was just going to say that, at some point, I just want to make sure that my most exciting part of this conversation is the oral historian that Emmanuel is, and we need to go back to 1980s physical therapy practice in the Philippines. I
Later
know we're
on.
dealing with a serious topic, but to lighten up later, I just want to make sure we want to talk about all the professional players that.
Oh God.
Kasi I think matutuwa yung mga Filipino audience natin sa kwento niya mamaya. Pero
Yeah.
let's deal with
Remember,
that.
Dad was in the 80s.
We'll make sure we'll take note of that. Kailangan balikan niya
I
namaya.
was thinking, our experiences here, di ba? We all came at different points in time. 80s, Freshie is actually closer to the 90s, right? Which is actually like around the time that we came as well. So you can kind of like see the struggles, especially of those who migrated. First being that there was wala naman masyadong PTs at that time, and then contrast that with, and then sila pa actually were in the south and then in Colorado, so which is really like white dominant area. So and then with you, Johan, I know by then, 'di ba? Grupo-grupo na 'yan eh. Ngayon iba na rin yung experience kasi 'di ba may mga barkada na, and then with social media, I guess it's you know I'm sure every one of us being away from like home still feels kind of alone in a way, 'di ba? Pero kahit paano, it's a different sense of community altogether.
Right, right.
And then they
Uh,
use it in the group.
how about you naman, Mark? You came here when?
2012,
2012.
January.
So
10
medyo
years?
recent.
Yeah.
How was your experience? What was your concerns and your struggles coming over here?
Yung sa agency naman, wala namang masyadong problema doon kasi during that time, matitino yung mga agencies during that short period of time. Binigyan nila kami ng they opened up bank accounts for us. Then they arranged a rental car tapos yung car nandito sa Amerika. Kasi dito sa Texas, where I am at, kailangan talaga may kotse ka. So I'm glad that was well taken care of. Kasi yung may Pilipino din sa hospital namin, pero medtech sila. Yung experience nila is, yun, wala. Nag-umpisa talaga sila sa, wala. Kasi yung agency nila, hindi sila binigyan ng suporta. So I'm very thankful for my agency. Kaya lang nung dumating ako sa doon sa pukunan na namin yung rental car, pinag-drive na ako. Sa ng siguro 1 hour yun. And hindi pa ako nakapag-drive sa America that time. So I had the death grip sa wheel, tapos nanginginig talaga ako. Sabi ko, baka mamatay na ako dito. Tapos kasi drive ko, mga 50 lang, tapos 70 miles per hour yung sa atin, di ba, pag 100 kph, mabilis na yun. Yung sa Monster naman, in terms of community, important kasi yun, dahil it very lonely mag-start dito sa Amerika. Kahit may mga friends ka, in my case, wala akong family member dito, tapos I left all my friends and loved ones back home. Tapos na-destino pa ako sa isang part ng Texas, malayo sa city, sa rural area talaga sila. The good thing is, nag-step up yung community to support me, even if they're of a different race than me, kasi Monster is about 98% white. But the people are very generous. They accepted me as their own. Ako lang yung Pinoy and foreign PT sa department, sa department, PT, OT, speech, lahat sila is white. So ako lang talaga yung foreigner. Then they took me as their own little brother. So they helped me, adjust. They gave me leeway kung nagkakamali ako. Binibigyan nila ako ng pointers how to talk to patients kasi iba yung sense of humor din dito sa South tsaka sa America itself. I didn't feel that I was different. Kasi they treated me as a professional and they didn't make siguro in front of me condescending comments or remarks that would indicate na they view me as others. So I was very thankful. Nung pagdating ko nga sa first day sa work, di pa ako makain ng breakfast nun kasi kakagaling ko lang sa airport. Wala akong kinain that night kasi sarado na yung lahat ng restaurant. So gutom na ako. I asked yung supervisor ko, saan ba pwedeng kumain dito? Pwede bang kumain dun sa sa cafeteria? Sige, punta ko sa cafeteria tapos yung kitchen staff prepared the breakfast for me. So that endeared me to endeared the community sa akin. Then nung nag-aaral ako sa DPT, they was yung hospital administration kahit hindi nila ako binibigyan ng sa tuition and etc. They gave me permission to use the hospital resources to study. Then kung kailangan ko mag-off sa work, they were supportive. Tapos nung graduation day ko, a day before, nagpa-party sila sa akin. Surprise party pa. Tapos nung pag-graduate ko sa DPT program, they had a newspaper article for me. Tapos nung pumasa ako sa GCS, they had a newspaper article dito sa community. Tapos nag-arrange sila ng radio interview para sa akin. So it was very positive. Patient-wise, yung struggle is yung kaya yung sinabi ni Fetch, yung confidence. Kung wala kang confidence, pwede mo siyang pekein para kasi para diba? Kasi parte siya na treatment din. If your patients see you confident, they would that would also enhance your treatment outcome. So yun, may mga pasyenteng kunyari tinatanong ako ng subtle comments about, okay, where did you come from? Or ilang taong ka na dito? Tapos are you Hispanic? Tapos and then tapos are you really my therapist? Tapos you look too young to be a therapist. Do you really know what you're doing? May mga ganon. So yung challenge is how to navigate that. So usually nadaan ko sa humor, or I just matter of fact sa patient. Tapos you learn how not to discuss politics, religion, or other sensitive topics sa patients. May mga patients ito that during the election period, masyadong heated yung conversation. So you have to know how to steer it away. Or kasi yun, it's mahirap nang maging involved sa sticky issues like that.
And right.
I
So
think
yan, parang you get to
Yeah, sorry. That's when
Yeah.
looking young it becomes a disadvantage.
So I have one American saying. I might get in trouble for saying. I'm going to say it anyway. Asian don't raisin. Narinig niyo ba yun? Kasi
No.
that's my first. Ano yung say na? What does that mean?
yung wrinkles, it takes a long time. Kaya minsan napapagkamalan tayong younger than we actually are. So that's what they heard in the past. Asian don't raisin.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
true.
You wouldn't. That's why looking at Emmanuel, you wouldn't guess, right?
Actually, yeah, full disclosure, I turned 56 last month. So
Happy birthday!
Happy birthday.
my coffee too. Happy birthday, Fred. Yeah,
Lahat
so
kayo
yeah,
po
I
birthday.
think
Happy birthday!
absolutely true. You when you first came here, and reality of it also is, especially during the 80s and the 90s, we graduate about 2 years earlier than our American counterparts.
Right.
So then that's why I kept saying, I came here at the age of 22. I was already a licensed physical therapist in the Philippines at the age of 20. So if if you put that in context here, they're barely graduating high school. So when you first walk into that room and you introduce yourself, and I'm, this 21, 22-year-old guy, and I'm saying, I'm going to be your physical therapist. And they look at you and they say, get out of here. It's like you're a candy striper. You're like, I won't believe you. And then on top of that, if you are not, I feel for Fretty, her initial struggle. That confidence, you kind of really have to build that very, very early on. Luckily, before I started work, I've already realized that I need to be, I have to develop that tough skin, and I have to sound and look confident, because my first July, right? I came July 88, August, September, and October, all I was doing was just finding someone to employ me. Right? And because I was jobless and within the United States, and my visa was about to expire. So I have to present myself during those times that, it's like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. Like I have to sound like an expert, because no one would be interested in you if they're gonna think that they'll have to train you to do what you need to do. So that I had to I had a saying before, fake it till I make it. I say it again, fake it till I make it. And that was it. It's like, if I don't know, I will tell you, I will learn it, and I will. And that, from the chat, any advice for incoming PT intern? Get that mindset already, right? So you need to make sure that you are. This is a phrase I learned from my DPT program as well. You need to be a lifelong learner. If it's something you do not know, you better find a way to learn. There are so many avenues right now that you can do it. Subscribe to CEU classes. I mean, there's like MedBridge. There's so many things that you could do, that you could and make sure that you have access to a word catalog, so you can go into the libraries of different universities all around the world, so you can start researching things, because that's it. You have to arm yourself with the knowledge. If you're an incoming person into this practice, you have to get into that mindset that you don't know all of it yet, you don't have all the skills yet, and you better find a way to learn it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's very true of us, internationally educated PTs. I don't know about you guys, because when I first, I mean, they were very happy to have me there because I was, there. They did not have enough PTs yet at the time. They're not graduating enough PTs within the U.S. And there's, it's like I'm one of the first few that my first job was a brand new hospital. Like it's a brand new rehab hospital. When I walked into the facility, my boss was a PT, her boss was a PT, the CEO was a PT, but none of them were touching patients.
Mm-hmm.
So when I walked in, I would be the first person to touch a patient. And guess what? I was given a traumatic brain injury unit. I was the only PT in a traumatic brain injury unit. In 1987, when I graduated, there was no such thing as a traumatic brain injury unit that you could intern at in the Philippines. So I had to fake it till I make it.
Mm-hmm.
I learned everything that I can about traumatic brain injuries. And that's how you kind of have to, the mindset when you start practice here, you gotta know, make a listing of what you're comfortable with and build your confidence in that. Make sure that you're selling yourself to people and saying, this is what I know, and I'm capable of doing this. And what I don't know, I will learn and find your resource.
If I may tie something Emmanuel said, and I think is something very important, especially dahil, may mga estudyante kami ni Consi, is notice how he was able to fake it by actually learning it. He
Yes.
actually had to go learn. Back in 1997 and 1996, when I was reading, gusto kong sunugin yung Brunstrom, tsaka yung isa, tsaka yung, ano pa isa? Tutora, yung isa, physiology, yung Sullivan. Kasi parang ang katapusan yung librong babasahin natin, di ba parang hindi ever tatapos?
Mm-hmm.
Flash forward, anong ginagawa ko ngayon? Instead ng hard copy, saan the bakmak na PDF na pumipila na parang hindi natatapos? Kasi nga, hindi natatapos yung kailangang aralin eh. So, to the interns or to the students who are thinking about PT, kung hindi kayo mahilig magbasa, it's gonna be an uphill struggle.
And it's not about healing mo or hindi.
All right,
It's something that
the
you
ethic.
have to do. It's under your responsibility to do. And actually, something that I'm also gonna tie to what Emmanuel was saying, diba, Fretchie and Mark as well, is that, diba, parang, okay, you have that feeling of, okay, you're not confident, diba? And I think that's natural, that's normal, that's expected, because we also don't want to steer them into thinking, oh, you have to be overly confident either. I think the key term there is what we call cultural humility, especially nowadays, just because there's social media, just because we share, we watch a lot of like American movies. Don't ever think that you're no longer going to have culture shock, because what we watch in the movies and what people portray, what people post could be very, 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 very different from what's actually happening. Diba? So, don't be overly confident that alam mo na lahat. And also, and this is the thing, sometimes kind of like my beef lang with the, with, I guess, with the way we're educated as well, that just because the books that we read, diba, are actually from the Western studies, we think the education is equivalent. I'm going to be the first one to admit it's not. The equivalent, the theoretical foundation, maybe, but the practice is definitely not. Such that when you get here, you also have to have that humility, to give yourself that, okay, I need to learn. And it's okay to admit that you don't know everything and struggle, that you're going to actually learn it. Kesa, oh, you know what I mean, diba? Like, hindi, okay lang to. Okay lang to. Okay lang ako. Actually,
Right.
it's normal for you to feel lost. It's normal na parang hindi ko to inaral kasi talaga namang hindi. Diba? You can just look at the APTA and look at all the practice areas that we're in, right? And look at all the practice areas that we're in the Philippines and that we were actually trained for. So it's not it's never going to be comparable. Not to put our Philippine education down, definitely not. That's where we all graduated. It's just that we still have a lot to learn after graduating. As you know, our diplomas is not a guarantee that we're already really good, right?
Mhm.
Diplomas, certificates, and what do you call that? Our licensure, diba? Only actually at the very baseline ensures that we don't harm people.
Right.
Diba?
Yeah.
That's the sense. That's
Minimal
all it takes,
competence.
diba? Is that you're not harming people, but that doesn't mean I'm gonna be honest. In the first few years of practice, I don't think they're getting better because of me. I think they're getting better because of time.
Mhm.
Diba?
Yeah.
I think they're just getting better because of the time they're spending, like trying to get better. But not really. I'm not sure that it's actually because of me. But at the very least, my concern was I just want to make sure I'm not harming them. So that's what
And,
I would.
and actually, that is by definition when you're even if you're handling students here, you're let's say you're a clinical instructor in a clinical setting. That is by definition you have to meet a minimum standard to be exactly what Consi said, to practice safely.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then when you meet that standard, then you're allowed to sit for the boards.
Yeah.
And then that's the next struggle is you pass that board, which is another struggle for us internationally educated PTs, because the way we structure our boards in the Philippines, I particularly during my time, I can tell you, I sat through the boards in the Philippines for 1.5 days for three exams, and it was so textbook. I mean, I even have a drawing of the brachial plexus during my exam that I have to label everything. And then when I came here and I sat for the through the American boards exam, and it was so practical, and
Yeah.
the verbiage is very different. And you're like it's really more, you're calling upon more critical thinking
Mhm.
rather than memorization. I'm like, oh my God. I was like, what? I was like, okay. So luckily I was actually at that point I was actually practicing already. So so you have to have, once again, you kind of have to realize that, it's physical therapy is not how well you memorize, it's how well you apply. So that's why when I left the Philippines, I came here and then I started working in hospitals here now, and then I appreciated my professors, the people that taught me anatomy, the people that taught me kinesiology, the people that taught me physio, because then I put it together. And then someone wise and very intelligent told me that, as a physical therapist, you know what you are. You're a movement expert. You're a mobility expert. You're a musculoskeletal and neuro expert, because you have to put it together. And that's kind of like, you kind of have to like want to make sure that you're reaching into those different things, because you have to learn how to tie it together. And that's how you practice. And that's kind of like, now that's how, like, that's me. I was like, oh, okay, like today I actually did an evaluation today, and it's lady with essential tremors, and then she did a deep brain stimulation. No, she did a focused ultrasound. So today I did her evaluation. Her biggest problem is balance. So now my hat's like neuro. Well, this is not just a neuro problem. Now I have to assess musculoskeletal. I have to assess vision. I have to assess, because it's a balance problem, equilibrium. So you kind of have to like, and you have to expand your knowledge. That's why you have to be a lifelong learner, because you do not know everything. And
Yeah.
you have to know the scope of our practice. The scope of our practice is not just pain. It's not just teaching people how to walk. Those movements are very, very complex, and that's many different systems working together. So you kind of have to, like, when you're learning, you gotta reach into every single
Mm.
facet of every single system.
Okay.
Right. So like, when you come over here in the US, be confident enough that you pass the board exam just like any other locals,
You
but be humble also enough to know that you have to learn more.
Yes.
Yeah, parang
Kasi,
ganon.
kasi Johan, I think humility paves the way to maturity.
Mhm.
And maturity paves the way to your quest for lifelong learning. Kasi, kaya yung sinabi ni Consi tsaka ni Emmanuel, you have to be real, or you have to be true to yourself first. Reflect. Self-reflection is a key to professional expertise and professional development. You have to know the bounds of your knowledge, where you're comfortable at, the areas wherein you don't know, and the areas that you think are very interesting and that you want to pursue. Then once you nakita mo na yung boundaries na yon of your current state, then you can be mature enough to tell yourself that, okay, kailangan kong matuto pa. And then once that realization sets in, then you search for avenues. Kaya yung sabi ni Emmanuel, marami na tayong avenues ngayon, MedBridge and all, na parang wala ka ng reason actually to get, na sabihin mo na, hindi ko alam to. Dahil knowledge is just right in front of us. It's just within our reach. So, it's the matter of the initiating within yourself that journey towards, lifelong learning. And again, that starts with self-reflection and just being true to yourself. Kasi yung sa akin nga, kanina, I had a patient with ACL repair and I thought, okay, alam ko na to. Yan ang mistake ko lagi. Pag nag-set in na sa utak ko na, okay, alam ko na to, doon ka magkakamali or doon mo ma-realize na hindi pala, marami pa pala akong kailangang malaman. So yung patient ko is as an ACL repair ko, okay, this is just routine. Tapos nakita ko, bakit siya non-weight bearing? Ang clinical practice guidelines right now is ACL patient or patients who had an ACL reconstruction can weight bear and wala namang meniscal root repair yung pasyente. So I asked myself, okay, bakit kaya ganito? Baka nagkamali yung surgeon. Hindi, the surgeon might have a reason why. So I talked to the surgeon, asked them for the op report, and I read about it, and I thought, bago tong method na ginawa niya. He used an endo button kasi usually ang ginagamit nila is screw. And an endo button, parang yung endo button is parang siyang maliit na, parang butones siya na nag-overlay lang siya doon sa femur. Tapos yung graft goes through it. Pero this particular patient, endo button fixation siya both sa femur side and sa tibial side. Usually, sa femur side lang yon. Tapos sa tibial side, gumagamit sila ng screw. Dahil endo button siya sa tibial femoral side, that's a reason why they had to do non-weight bearing. And I had to go through the technical specs nung manufacturer itself nung endo button. Just to know na nag-research sila and they found that early weight bearing and early aggressive range of motion causes enlargements of femoral tunnel kung nandun yung graft. So, naglulusan yung graft over time. So, ganun pala yun. So, I learned something new.
And see what the big part of what Mark was talking about was like the button stuff. But, the point is there's studies actually out there that you can actually access and obtain so you can get that kind of knowledge. And then the other thing that really, really is very important is, the humility of the fact that, okay, it's like, okay, this is something wrong, that he's into to the fact that, okay, you're using your critical thinking. This is something new. Why not weight bearing? Protocol dictates, you should be allowed weight bearing. But going back and communicating with your physician and asking, that shows really your humility, and that shows your quest for lifelong knowledge, because you're asking information. It's like, okay, this is out of the norm. Why is it out of the norm? Explain to me why this needs to be this, and then if you're not still, if that's not enough. And I love the fact that Mark was like not happy with just saying because it's another button. It's like, well, I counted on the button before. Why not? Why not still weight bearing? So he actually went into his resources and found information as to why. That's a learning, like just listening to him, that's a learning experience for me, because I see those diagnoses every single day as well. So
I think that's also one thing that we have to also put into consideration is that research, diba? Kaya rin siya lifelong learning is because we're actually in the healthcare, we're in science, and science is not the truth. I mean, I'm sorry. For those who think science is the truth, science is not the truth, because science is always only dependent on the discoveries and the research that actually happens at that time. And now, especially at this time, science is continually evolving. May bago, So, Mark, may bago na naman na ganito, which is why, I think to me, like especially my DPT experience, the very first thing that I told myself is that, you know what, I have to unlearn to learn. That to me was key for my DPT. First semester pa lang, nirealize ko na, yung mga foundational knowledge that I thought was foundational, but hindi na nakapako na nung 20 years ago. I'm like, hindi na pala siya. It's no longer the truth at that time. 7 years ago, 10 years ago, I mean, after, when I went through my, 8 years after when I went through my DPT, I'm like, okay, the science has already changed. So that's why actually one time when I attended the PPTA conference, I remember there this one faculty was saying, ano ba naman magbabago sa tinuturo ko? Basic nga yun. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So which is why
That's kind of scary.
it was really scary to me because I'm like, no, diba? Basic changes over time, hindi siya nakapako. So at the back of my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, kawawan mo yung mga estudyante.
Here's another thing to that, it's we're the children of two worlds. Mark is practicing at the top of his license. He wasn't like, oh, sabi ni Doc, okay na yun. Right? Or, hindi, mali si Doc. He actually is using his critical thinking, his rational building, how to do that. Now, in the Philippines, is there space for that, for a PT to do that? Considering yung institutional relationships, yung kung paano ang relationship within institutions. Let's talk about cultural. Yung authority figure, yung si Doc nagsabi ng ganito. Is there even space to have a conversation, right? And the Philippines is the Philippines. It is what it is because that's yun tayo eh. For America is America. So I think what we need to watch out for, kasi I think the theme of this conversation seems to be paano yung change, is being aware of those two. They're parallel, they're both true, they're both real, and navigating both those worlds will be different. It's when you start navigating one or the other. So obviously we're talking about Filipinos who want to come to American practice here, but also I'll argue Phil PTs who decide they want to help in the Philippines, they come guns blazing in saying, this is how we do it in America. And it doesn't foster change and relationships. Kasi tayo naman na PhilAm sometimes, we are not, I guess, giving as much consideration for the real issues that PTRPs are facing. So, yeah, that's just one thing I want to point out to the panel and to anybody who's listening.
So that's cultural context. That's the term.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for that, Ben, because I could tell you honestly, I'd probably be, if ever I have to go back to the Philippines and practice again, I'd probably be one of those people who'd be, guns blazing, ARs, and in my head, it'd be exactly. And they probably would hate me because I would definitely, and you're absolutely right, because, going back to the premise of our discussion, what we had to learn and acculturate to when we first came over here, that is actually one of my shocks. When I was sitting amidst a team conference, right? And a team conference is basically your peers, so all the different specialties around you, nursing, OT, your doctor, your social worker, case managers, so they're sitting around you, and I was giving a patient, and once again, it's the TBI. And the doctor looked at me and he said, so Emmanuel, how long do you think we should have the patient in the hospital? And I went, what? I really and truly, my boss had to hold my hand and squeeze it because I was, what? Like, what is he asking me? Why am I the person to tell him how long the patient needs to be in the hospital? And that is the what I had to learn that very quickly, that you are here, you're a professional in the Philippines. And I hate to say this, and I really absolutely hate to say this because I learned a lot in the Philippines. But when I was practicing at Cardinal Santos Memorial Hospital in Green Hill,
Here's the story I wanted.
right? I was a glorified tech because I would my evaluations were useless because essentially, it doesn't matter what I see in my evaluation. I will do the hot box ultrasound massage, electrical stimulation on my patient, which is what's written on the right. So, and I don't know if you guys are familiar. I don't even know if this hospital exists. Cardinal Santos Memorial Hospital at the time it's in the middle of Green Hills, right? So this is
It's still there.
there. Oh my god! How my doctors are not there because they will hate me for sure now. Because I was, and they had a very affluent patient population.
Are we gonna name names now?
Not only Emmanuel.
So really and truly, that's where they sent like movie stars and
like who?
Yeah.
Like, I had Crispa and Toyota players in San Miguel at that time. Yeah, I'm not naming names. I had Robert Jaworski, Ate Go, those were our patients in our clinic.
Gaano pa kaikli yung short noon dati?
Huh?
Gaano kaikli yung basketball shorts dati?
Unfortunately, when they go to the clinic, walang uniform.
Hey, walang hipa sa Philippines, right? So we can name
You're
names.
only doing hot box ultrasound massage. So I'm like this it's not even 8 minutes at the time for ultrasound, it's 5 minutes. I'm like, and no gel. I'm using oil, right? I'm using
Wouldn't that hate?
I'm using mantika, right? I am not kidding. And my electrical stimulation machine was color brown. It wasn't a Richmar, the white fancy ones now with the different waveforms that you have. No, I think I have alternating current and direct current. So you can either do a point stimulation and the very basic tense unit. That's all we have, and that's my entire day. Sometimes I would get a patient, I would have to do ultrasound in like 6 different body parts. So and then you'll have to stretch everything.
Mhm.
So that's what the practice. They tell you what to do, and you kind of just have to do it. There was no need to critically think anything at that point. Unfortunately, that was my practice. I'm hoping that it has changed and evolved through the years.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was kind of like. So I'm a glorified tech, even though I'm doing it with Robert Jaworski or Ate Ko. It's still a back ultrasound massage.
May pain modulation naman pag ginaganon mo siya yung head, no?
Oh yeah.
May diin kasi yun eh.
Baka hindi lang talaga
Yeah. So I was an expert on doing that circuit.
Inuan mo ba yung machine?
Oh no, we have to do it. We have to do the test every single week to make sure that the machine is working. So you have to. I don't know if you guys remember this. You have to put the tape
Around it,
around
water.
the head, right? And then you have to put the water on top of it, and you have to turn it on, and you have to see that the vibration.
Walang hot pot, mantika.
Mantika.
May re-use yung mantika?
Mabilis maubos yung gel eh. Kasi, so pag wala na yung gel, so sa beginning of the week, naka-gel ka. Pagdating towards Friday, Saturday, yung gel, naka-mantika.
Vegetable oil.
I remember my first internship somewhere I'm not gonna say where, but somewhere in Laguna. Masuka-suka ako kasi, ito naman, you have to scrape the gel and reuse it.
Yeah.
Save ang pasyente.
Yeah.
It was so gross. I'm like, hindi ko kaya. So the first time I threw it out, nakita ko, demerit. Sabi ko, ano gagawin ko? Pwede po ba ako magdadala na lang ako out of my own allowance? Kasi talaga sa scrape mo. So pagkatas ng dalawang gamit, iyak na ba talagang yung color niya putin? You have to scrape. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Oh yeah, well, the same thing.
He had me known, pwede pala mantika. Di sana mantika na lang.
Have you used the paraffin before? Sa amin, once here, pagtanggal mo nung paraffin wax, diba, tapon? No.
No.
Balik namin dun sa bath para mauman.
Sayang din eh.
And at the end of the day, you have to clean out all the dirt, all the dirt that settles in the bottom.
Are you? Yes, actually. So you have to freeze everything again. Let it cool down so you can chop off the bottom.
Parang naglalagay ka ng sinigang,
All the
di ba?
dryness.
Tanggal mo yung sa ibabaw.
Yeah. So I guess like what interns can do in the Philippines is try to imagine them as the first person na kikitain talaga ng pasyente. Like your words and your evaluation matters. Yun talaga dapat magandang isipin nila eh. Even though na kailangan kitain ng doctor yung patient, pero going into internship, dapat yun ang iniisip nila that my evaluation matters. This is important.
Kaya parang pwede sila makaambag. May ambag
Oo, no, kahit hindi basahin ng doktor, pero for them dapat ganun yung mindset nila. Yeah.
Janet,
Which is dapat naman ganun, di ba? Like the evaluation should be the most important part. Dito ang laki ng singilan ng evaluation eh, di ba? Pero sa Philippines, when I just put out a home care survey, tinatanong ko how much rate they're charging pag home rate, and they said they charge similar yung evaluation, some of them lesser pa in evaluation. Well, yung evaluation, di ba, yung pinaka-importanting part ng pagkita mo sa pasyente, di ba? So yun, parang
the thing is that I was actually just speaking to a psychiatrist this morning, and that yun yung part of our conversation. And from what I understand from what the doctor was saying is that in the patient's mind, the evaluation has already been done because they were already seen by the doctor. So parang kasi hoda pa, bakit ka pa kailangan mag-evaluate? At least in the patient's mind, parang dapat yan, pagdating sa PT, because you already have the orders, treat na tayo kagad. So, so now I'm trying to balance, okay, maybe that's the patient's expectations, but that doesn't mean that we cannot change, diba, the practice to also educate the patient. It has to come from somewhere.
Right.
You want, and I think that's also what I'm going to tell the interns. You also have to be, honestly, at this point in time, you have to be bold, you have to be courageous, especially if you want something to change. You cannot expect change to always be done from people outside of you. Sometimes, diba, sabi nga Mahatma Gandhi, you have to be the change you want to be. So, but pushing change though also requires a lot of, syempre, there's also a lot of skills in it, so it's not always hardcore, palaging, palaban, hindi naman ganun. But you always have to try. And whenever, like say you get rejected, wag sasama yung loob, wag balat sibuyas, don't take anything, please, don't be very personal. Siguro, just a general advice, lalo na dito, medyo madamdamin tayo eh, di ba? Si Mark gumaganon eh, di ba? Medyo madamdamin tayo. And actually, Freshie, that was what I was gonna ask you too. Because, you're also married to a non-Filipino. So I'm actually thinking, ikaw, every day of your life, you're acculturating both at home and at work. Like, how is that?
Mm-hmm. Oh, well, I've been married for 21 years, so that seems natural to me now. But no, I wanna add on speaking up. That's really, really important. That if you think something is wrong, you better speak up. And more, I'll say 99% of the time, like doctors, they don't want to be wrong. Like, orthopedic surgeons are known to be arrogant and, they feel like God. But that's really important. But as you said too, that takes time to be confident, to speak up. And I also want to say too, especially working in a hospital. I work in a hospital, and there's advantages and disadvantages of being a PT, because I'll say the disadvantage first, because they just expect you to magically treat someone. So could they send someone home? But if you realize, especially for interns, that's how significant and relevant our profession is. We have a say. We can keep patients in the hospital and more. And again, it takes time to be confident, to like justify or to show you, to document that, these patients are not safe to go home. And again, it just reminded me, because the culture in the Philippines is like doctors are always right. You don't contradict what they're saying. And for me, even now, like, it surprised me that I can do that, because growing up in the Philippines, I was never, my mind was conditioned that, the doctors are, like the be all or the end all. So, but now, as a practicing PT, especially in the hospital, oh my God, like I probably upset a few doctors here and there. And I try to get along, but sometimes I have to put my foot down, like they're not safe to go home. And I'm going to document that. And again, as interns, documentation, I know we hate it sometimes, but documentation is very, very important. And knock on wood, I don't have any wood here nearby, but I haven't been, on a lawsuit yet because of you. But document is very, very important. So I didn't know about the your question, Consi, about having a non-Filipino, and so that
And what I mean is that for like, of course, obviously I'm married to Ben, so when I'm home, I have to, like you can kind of like, I know like when we first moved here, and what good thing is that we're kind of like always on the same wavelength, but at least like you can speak in Tagalog if you need to.
Oh, yeah.
Like more or less the culture, like more or less
Oh, I gotcha. Oh, so let me just tell you, because that was the other struggle, because I came here.
Yung mga, some people,
Yeah, it was a struggle. No,
like
it is a struggle, I have to admit. So yeah, that is another. It's not professionally related, but it does affect your professional life, because if things are not good at home, because like for me, I could tackle anything as long as things are good at home. But when things are not good at home, then yeah. But for the most part, like the cultural adjustment for me, because even though we speak English even before coming here, we understand it. But if we talk about straight English conversation, I don't know about you guys, but when I was in the Philippines, I don't speak English straight. I put Cebuano or Tagalog in English. It wasn't like straight English or pure English. So that was a struggle. And then the other thing about not having family or support, I didn't have any family here when I moved here. So, but the first year was tough. Not so much it affected my professional life. It was just navigating, because I'm a social butterfly, and not being able to drive when I first moved here and being dependent on my American husband that was never exposed to Filipino culture. That really was hard. So in that aspect, yeah, so that was a struggle on a personal level. But so my first year not having family and having to speak English right away when you wake up in the morning, but in the long run, it helped me, because when you work here in the US, you have to speak English. So that's why people have asked me, like, why is it easy? Well, I spoke English even before I came here, and then I married an American. I did not have a choice. And I have to say, this is funny, but I used to, like, when we were fighting before, it was so hard for me because I couldn't speak English. But after 1 year, then I was like, I know how to speak now, so I could. But on the lighter side of things. So, but yeah, but that's a very good point.
Still massive repetitive practice lang, you got better, no?
Yeah. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's like implying that we were fighting a lot. So no, that's not the case.
I'm sure you weren't.
And then how about the food? Like especially in Colorado.
Oh my God. Well, my husband struggled. If you guys are really interested, but real quick, my husband struggled because now I'm a foodie now, so that's better. But it used to be I only eat rice and chicken when I first moved here. So for the first 6 months, my poor husband, and then I don't know about you guys, but I was surrounded by very good cooks when I was in the Philippines. So I wouldn't say I didn't learn how to cook. I just didn't have an opportunity. So I was not a good cook. So like all the food that I know how to cook now, I didn't know how. And then back then there wasn't YouTube videos. There was an internet, but it was limited as far as finding a recipe. And you're like, well, this is not like my mom's cooking. So the food, it was harder for me than it was for my husband. It really was. He had to drive me every single day, just finding a Japanese restaurant to buy me food. And because that was the only thing I want to eat was like rice and teriyaki chicken. That is so true. Yeah. But after that, you adjust. You adjust again. You don't have a choice. If you want to live here, you adjust again. So yeah, that's funny.
We have a comment or question coming from Rika Jabs. Hey everyone, thank you for sharing your insights and advices on IBTs in the US. Any tips on those who want to explore different PT field and expertise in the US? Kasi I think medyo the trend in the Philippines is specializing and focusing on a different field. Unlike before that, a generalist is okay. It's still okay naman, pero I think more people are more concentrating on different fields. So, um, how can they explore the different fields and expertise in the US?
I know Rika. So
Mhm.
she was actually, yeah, she was a student of ours in the transitional DPT program. So I hope, actually, Rika just came a few months ago.
Oh,
So
okay. Oh,
she's in,
welcome, Rika.
I think she's in Texas. Now. So
Oh,
I'm not sure if
hi.
she's near, yeah, Emmanuel and Mark, but she's in Texas if I'm not mistaken. So I hope you're okay. They're doing great, and syempre kasi with Rika, I'm just gonna share my experience is that I know when I came here and if I wanted to pursue PT, I'm really interested in outpatient ortho. So, but what I did, even though that was my interest, is that I actually tried working in different kinds of facilities, like different practices, literally, just for me to have a feel of okay, how is it in like say a nursing home, how is it in a hospital. There was no ICU PT at that time, so I was the first like like PT ICU manager, whatever, because I was the only one really. Okay, so and then from there, like practice settings, I think I would say like explore different practice settings, and then like from there see your different expertise. And of course APTA is always a great resource. I mean, I'm so grateful that APTA is actually something that's much more readily accessible at this time. But really, I think this is also something that we would strongly encourage IEPTs is that, what we call, as much as we have the personal acculturation that we call, we also have to have that professional acculturation. And that's the thing. Yung pagiging alien natin will actually not get any better if we don't get involved, at the very least to become member and to actually really see what's out there. Because otherwise, hindi yung comment ko pa minsan, if we actually just keep, talking amongst ourselves within the community that we know, honestly, we don't really grow that way. You got to be able to explore outside. I mean, we love our community will always have that special sense of belonging, diba, within our Filipino community. But we're not in the Philippines, and even in the Philippines, actually, they even also have to grow outside of just the Filipino PT community. So I would say, like explore, and even especially if you wanted to do specialization, that's also one of the perks of being an APTA member is that you actually have a huge discount, right? Like I know Johan, Mark, diba? We all did all the specialization. So that was just like a general background, and then I'll leave it to you guys, to share your experience on that.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm
Mark.
actually I'm actually curious because I just found out that Mark and Johan and I are all geriatric specialists.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, how Mark, how did you decide? I mean,
Ah, kasi nung pagdating ko, siguro, in general muna sa question niya, I advise that for the first 1 to 2 years, just gaya yung sinabi ni Consi, just explore different fields and settings. And then, naturally, may mga events na magna-nudge sa'yo sa particular specialty. Una dyan, kunyari, presence of a mentor, yung personal experiences mo, yung passions mo. For example, gaya nung sa akin, I was very close to my grandmother, and she had dementia, Alzheimer's, and that really deeply affected me, and that nudged me towards taking care of others, and especially taking good care of other people's grandparents, just as I would take care of my own lola. So with that desire, and may mga I'm fortunate that I have mentors back in the Philippines that are geriatric specialists that helped me along the way and gave me guidance. And doon nag-solidify that paved the way for me to choose to be a geriatric specialist because I want to be a better therapist for uh, for the patients and grandparents or parents of the people that I serve sa community. So dun siya nanggaling. Yun, that's from my experience.
Mhm. For me naman, since I started here home health, so most of my patients are elderly. So parang I got that sense na okay, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy helping the older population. Tapos I thought, what how can I improve myself in helping this population better? So uh doon na pumasok yung when I'm part of the Facebook group AFAPT, Academy of Filipino American Physical Therapists, and they post like congratulations. They did like for newly board certified clinical specialist. So doon ko lang nakita yung may ganun palang specialization. So being aware of that, so nag-research na ako, ay pwede pala since ito yung population na sinaserve ko ngayon, baka dito na lang ako. So, parang sa ako, parang hindi ko talaga siya, wala siya sa mindset ko. But since I was already there in that population, I thought of just sticking there. And when I moved here sa California, napunta naman ako sa SNF, then older population pa rin. So, sabi ko, dito talaga ako sa geriatrics. So, wala sa isip ko, pero kinda, the career pointed me to that direction. Yeah.
I guess with me, I decided on. I mean, I guess it's a long and very complicated way to get here. To be a geriatric specialist as well. Because early on, I thought I was like this neurotherapist. I
Mm.
mean, my focus was really and truly TBI, stroke. So in the beginning, and I think that's how I realized I'm a lifelong learner because I was like, okay, I'm so BOBAF, I'm so NDT. So I went and did my training in NDT, and then I got burned out with that. Because the progress was to me was very slow, and I realized now that it wasn't the patient, it was probably my approach because I was so narrowly focused that I'm not exploring everything. So I tried to switch, and then I started doing ortho and spine, and then I'm like, now I'm a Mackenzie therapist. I went through every single freaking training you can find, like attended every single A, B, C, D, and E, to get my skills and then I thought I was gonna be in management and private practice, which I actually ventured into. So I even went and got my master's in healthcare administration at that point. This was in the mid 90s. I'm a very slow learner because 20 years later I found out that I was not very happy in management. I was yeah, I that was I hated that practice. I hated being responsible for somebody else's performance. And, it gets, I can't. You think you can control that, but you can't. And then so I went and kind of reinvented myself, and I went back to practicing, and I went into home health. And when I was doing home health, I kind of learned that my thing was helping people. And I love this phrase, and I don't know if you guys have heard this phrase, aging in place.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So yeah, to me that was kind of like my mind was blown. I was like, because every single person I talked to, every single adult, older adult person that I talked to, all they want was really to be able to stay in their home and to thrive and not be pulled out of their own home and then put an institution. So that triggered my passion. And then I met a lot of 80-year-olds that like yeah, and I'm not kidding, that became good friends of mine. Like I would to this date, some of them I would still talk to and visit. Like they were actually World War II veterans, and they were stationed in the Philippines, and so that was very cool. That was a very cool experience because then they're talking to me, especially when they find out that I'm Filipino, and they're like, and from that point I was kind of like, oh wow, like I do enjoy working with the older population. So, and that's how I came to my specialization, kind of like what Consi's saying. Mine took a long time to do it, but essentially what I did is I stuck my hand into every single practice there and found out that, what, my passion is this group of people. So I went and specialized in that, and now I'm finding that, it's because of my specialization I can actually, when I look at my and it's it's a valuable thing to have, I have to say, because now my quest for learning is very focused on like geriatrics and ortho or geriatric and neuro. So now I can like, okay, when I come across something I am challenged by, then I can like go into that and really dig my heel into it and kind of learn and absorb like a sponge what I want to learn about that, So, and I think that's the key is, find what makes you wake up in the morning and what burns in you to find out, to learn. And that's how I found mine.
Burning.
Burning. Not an infection.
So on the
Passion.
topic of, on the topic of like say, yeah, what wakes you up and burning? Of course, some of us, I mean, no, like Rika is relatively new, diba? Practitioners, US wise. But of course, burnout, because burning, I just realized about burnout is one of the biggest like problems in the practice right now. And I'm talking about US practice. I don't know about the Philippines. I don't have data on that, but from what I'm hearing, iba rin kasi yun. Actually, hindi na nga lumaabot sa burnout eh. Pero, iba yung issue. But dito, burnout. So a lot of people, that has been a lot of our conversations in a lot of like the conferences that we've had and everything. So a lot of people, as you guys know, parang, okay, we're so involved in like the different aspects of the profession. We're in practice, we're in this, we're in advocacy, and that is a frequent question. So what I have to say is when it comes to that, um, I think what really also helps us not burn out is to also really involve ourselves in, things that honestly, like, it's not in practice per se. It doesn't pay us financially, but it's also a form of, and I wouldn't say giving back because there's no such thing. Ako lang muna. It's actually a form of paying forward. The advocacy is a form of paying forward. The only thing with advocacy too is that, there's no attachment to your name. There's a lot of resources actually involved with trying to help out, diba? An advocate. But at the end of the day, there's not much like personal gain in it kasi nga hindi naman siya bayad, 'di ba? Wala ka namang pangalan at the end of it. But what we find is that it's actually very fulfilling in a very different way.
Mhm.
It's very fulfilling, and I cannot explain it enough. I can only go back to what the Bible says. When it comes to like you receive when you give, something like that, right?
Mhm.
Diba? That the more you give, the more you receive. So I think yun eh. And honestly, which is not something, I guess it's also a Filipino trait, or maybe not. I actually don't know. But giving back to the different communities that we're in, whether it's back home or here. And I think that's a privilege for a lot of us Filipino Americans because, in a way, we're navigating two worlds, right? Which is also a challenge because we are also navigating two worlds,
It's an
because
opportunity
that's also an
to
opportunity,
help in
diba?
two worlds.
Because we're helping in both. Pero the burnout is also very real, diba? Yun yung, and that's why I like, to me, the multicultural PT and actually helping specifically the immigrant population of the United States, which is increasing all the more. Okay, and Asians actually are the highest population amongst all um, races that's actually migrating in the United States. Is that we as PTs also have the opportunity to actually help this migrant population acculturate. Hindi lang yung PT, but the acculturation itself, process, we can also help them navigate that because that's a stressor, 'di ba? Yung health concerns nila. And we see that every day. And it's not just us, even our US counterparts. Yung health beliefs nila, 'di ba? Parang who else better understands those, 'di ba?
Mhm.
Kaya nga sinasabi ko, pagdating natin dito, madami tayong bagaheng dala. Actually, ganito yan eh. Dalawa lang yung bagaheng dala natin normally, 50 pounds, right? And your hand carry. Right? 'Di ba? Pero actually, madami tayong mental, emotional baggage that also comes with it of being here. So I feel like when we go here, we really have to self-assess really. What is it that's good to actually live back? Hindi ko na yung kailangan. Diba? And ano yun talagang dadalhin mo that you can actually use, that's going to be very useful, not just for yourself, but for the people around you. So,
Right, right. So, ang dami nating napag-usapan. Pahaba yung usapan natin.
Maraming
Pero,
rabbit hole. Maraming rabbit hole. Yeah.
ha?
Maraming rabbit hole. Maraming tangent na pwede puntahan.
Right, right. Actually, marami pa tayong pwedeng puntahan na usapan but for the sake of time and kasi gabi na rin dyan sa inyo. I just like to thank everyone for coming to the podcast, sharing your experiences, and also thank you dun sa mga nanonood, those who are watching and who sent their questions to us and kind of led the conversation as well. So just to wrap up, at the end of the podcast ko, I usually ask my guests what's if there's something that you want the audience to take away from our conversation, yung something that they can apply in their practice once they come Monday, ano yung gusto mong ibabaon sa kanila? Yan. What's that one thing that you want them to take away from our conversation today on the topic of like migrating and working in the US as a PT? Sige, I'll start na lang muna while you guys think. So, I guess for me, it's like when you're thinking about going to the US as a PT, siguro, just be mindful about who you trust your future with, like your recruiter, your agency. Be really research on them. Siguro for me, make sure that they're gonna help you going here. Ask them what their part is going here, what your responsibilities, what their responsibilities are. Hindi yung kasi there are stories that even up to this day na recruiters and agencies would just drop you off and that's it. No, wala nang anything after that. So you're here to fend for yourself. So make sure that you know what you're going into. Research the agency, the person that you trust your career with. So and make sure that you have some support as well coming over here. That's really important because if your agency like just drops you off, at least you know someone that can help you out. So that's for me. Anyone can go next.
Great, I'll go. Build, reach out and serve community. Basically, pagdating mo dito, it's really helpful to have a community. So sa amin mag-asawa, it became our schoolmates. And from our schoolmates, it became professional mates. Kasi kung sila, Emmanuel, 80%, yung batch namin, I think around 75% eh. It's easier for us to count kung ilan na lang yung naiiwan sa Pilipinas kesa kung sino yung nandito. It's gotten to that point, right? So kami support kasi usually marami sa walang family, just like a lot in this panel. So build that community. But because you're even though you're looking back at your old community, whether it's school or being the Filipino community, reach out. Ang challenge ko palagi sa mga bagong dating, within 5 years, kailangan ma-invite ka sa isang birthday party ng isang hindi Pilipino. Right? Kasi doon ko malalaman na talagang hindi ka nakatago sa barangay eh. Kasi sabihin nun talagang you are immersing yourself in the culture, in the community you're serving. Like si Mark, hindi na nga siya lumabas, sila na lumapit sa kanya. So God bless. What community is that, Mark?
Monster
the community, right? For being kind to him. And then lastly, serve. Serving community na nasaan ka, you guys are aware that we're trying to serve the Filipino community in the Philippines, right? And we're also trying to serve the American community and the PT community here in the US. So, yun ang sa akin siguro. Build, okay? Reach out and serve communities.
So I'll naturally go para hindi mo nalilipat yung okay. I think I have two. Okay, one is that we all have biases. Let me just put that out there, right? Kasi we've mostly come from a monocultural society. Filipino lang, di ba? Iba-iba lang yung. It's more of social economic, I think, social economics. Yun yung mostly I think, bias natin. But here now, we're introduced to a multitude of cultures. So, and a lot of people may not realize that, but Filipinos could be very biased, right, against others as well. So I would say, just like what Ben said, like, try to really reach out, because you're already in a great place to start with, and it's really going to help you actually connect to the people around you, the community around you, to actually, yun yung first nun, is that be aware of your bias and actually try to really get to know people to overcome the bias. That's the only way that you can actually, otherwise, and don't make, although the experiences of others, right, is also a good way to learn. Don't make all the experiences of others your own experience. And that's just me, siguro. Like, okay, you may have had an experience with that, but I may have another. So unless it happens to me sometimes, and maybe sometimes hindi rin maganda yun, I kind of like always give like second opportunities, ganyan. And then the other one, they're on a very practical side, is that I know for a lot of, especially those struggling, with their work conditions, because of what the agencies and their workplaces are actually having them do. Honestly, mas matakot kayo pangalagaan yung license nyo, because here in the States, ultimately, it's the physical therapist who's actually responsible for your own practice. Hindi ka business owner. Those are two different things, okay? As a licensed professional, you are your own practice. You are the practice owner. So, pati billing, you cannot say, oh, pagka ikaw na audit, hindi pwedeng sabihin, oh, this is what the facility wanted me to do. They're going to go after your license. So, sa totoo lang, sandamakmak ang potential agencies and workplaces that can actually continue, diba? Your status and all that, it's not impossible, pero isa lang yung license. If your license gets revoked, that's it, pansit, right? So always think about that, especially when you're pushed against a hard wall. Uh, Always your license first. Because pag wala ka ng license, that's about it. Especially right now, akala ng tao, oh, buti na lang meron ng, what do you call that? Compact.
License.
Right? But what people did also realize is that, okay, pagka red mark ka sa isang state, patay ka. Hindi ka rin makakapunta sa iba. Diba? So always think there's always a repercussion to all of that. So, please reach out. Wala naman, may Facebook na, may social media na, like, please, wala nang ibang tutulong sa iyo ngayon kundi tulungan mo yung sarili mo. Hindi na pwedeng kikimi-kimi. That works for the Philippines maybe, but not here. So.
Right. Okay. Who's next?
I think I'll go next. Just to tie in with what Concy said, treat each patient encounter as a gift and as a learning experience. Then learn or get to see your patient as a human being with his or her own story, no matter what color of his or her skin is. Kung gaano, kunyari, if the patient is proving very difficult, there's a reason for that.
Mhm.
And don't judge a patient because of that. Well, it'll be hard not to, but just understand that patient's also going through something. And just being aware of that makes you appear more compassionate to the patient. That opens doors. And then it also helps mitigate or reduce your bias against a person or against a person's skin, religion, color, or political affiliation. That helped me a lot here.
Okay, I'll go next. I'll just add just briefly. I know I was talking about not being confident and all that stuff, but my parting word is believe in yourself. Believe in yourself. We have good work ethics coming from the Philippines, and don't take things personally. I think I have to stress that. Tough skin, but don't take personally. It's not against, or it's not a measurement of what kind of person you are. Just some people, some patients, they just don't like you, your personality clash. So don't take things personally.
All right.
I guess I'm the last one. So for those of you who are thinking of coming over and practicing in the US, I guess my parting words would be to be both excited and curious. Excited because you need you need to be open to jumping into new things. That there is a reason why you left the comfort of home and to come over here and to experience this, right? So be excited about that, because that will that also that establishes your energy, right? When you're excited about new things, you're also excited about learning new things. And that's the other thing, curiosity. You have to be very curious. Comes with curiosity is your ability to ask questions. Don't be fearful of asking questions. If you do not know, ask questions and find out. If they can't give you the answers, find out ways to get the answers for you. um, I envy you guys. You know, I went to the school of pen and paper. um, when I went to my master's program, that was the beginning of Windows,
Yeah.
right? No, mid 1990s. And then when I went to my, I'm not joking. When I went to my DPT, when they told me that I was supposed to do research at home, and I have this world catalog that's open for me. Utilize those. Be excited. Be curious. Reach out for new information. Be open to learning new skills, because we none of us have it. I've been in the practice for 30 something years, and I'm still learning something new every single day. So yeah, excited. Be very excited about the change that you have embraced, and then be very curious about what's opening up to you, because it's a brand new world, you know. And you have to maintain that mentality from day one till, you know, you're about to retire from the US at the age of 67 or 70, right? So yeah, those are my two things.
All right. So again, thank you, everyone, Manuel, Mark, Ben, Maria, Fretchie, for coming over to the podcast, sharing your experiences live, unfiltered, unfiltered, and and I know. And we hope for those who are still watching, you learned a lot from our perspective and insights and our experiences, so that it gets you excited kung pupunta man kayo dito sa US or you're staying in the Philippines, on what paths or you would take in your career. So yeah, so hopefully we can have another conversation like this. Pwede, no? Ang dami natin pwedeng pag-usapan with
I miss you guys.
yeah.
When is PSM?
Mag-host yata
Wow.
si Johan sa California being the home state, di ba? Was that the conversation? Ganun ba yun?
San Diego kasi, kita-kita tayo sa San Diego.
San Diego.
San Diego, 2023, yes.
2023. Yeah.
O so yeah, yung mga bagong dating, merong national conference APTA. Marami sa inyo na sa California. Go to San Diego in February. Malamang these 5 folks are gonna be there.
Oh,
We're
I'll
gonna
be
go
there.
say hi. Lilibre ako ng Johan ng In-N-Out. Baka kayo rin.
Oh, and the
Burger daw.
and Consi, you guys might want to talk about the meeting coming up in August, right?
Right.
Multicultural.
So, okay, so just very briefly, yeah. So, great news, because we are now, thank God, like officially under the umbrella of the APTA through the Academy of Leadership and Innovation, which was formerly HPA. Okay, so we are now at the starting point. We are a catalyst group. So this is just a starting point, but which is why I say, this is really when the work begins, because hopefully eventually we transition to a SIG. Okay, so a special interest group within the ALI as well. So this is really open to actually just about any PTs who are actually interested in learning about like different cultures. So but the multicultural PT group, it's really spearheaded by, thankfully, like internationally educated PTs, and these are actually PTs from all over the world, not just the Philippines, but of course we're very much active in it. So the Philippines, India, we have somebody from like South Africa as well. Nigeria, yeah. But these are actually just the ones from the IEPT work staff group that we had before. But with the newly formed Multicultural PT Catalyst, it's really open for everyone. So we're going to have a town hall meeting that's going to be on August 18th. That's going to be at 8 o'clock Eastern Daylight Savings Time. That's going to be, I think, 5 o'clock in California. So that's actually when we're going to be presenting it's not a it's not the final strategic plan, so mission, vision, and all that. But basically, we're presenting. We wanted feedback, and more especially as well, we also want your feedback on the kinds of advocacies, programs that you think is really going to help these communities. When I say community, I'm talking about internationally educated PTs. So this can be from licensure, to just about anything, acculturation, most especially. We're also talking about first and second generation immigrant PTs, PT students, PTAs. Because the thing is, nung una, akala namin actually it was just for IEPTs, but then we realized actually no. It was during the CSM presentations that a lot of actually PT students whose parents, are immigrants themselves, actually learned a lot. So it was mind blowing because you're all of a sudden, without intending to, actually also building generational gaps. So it's actually an intersectionality that we call, okay, because it's both the generational and the cultural gap. So I'm like, oh wow, so pareho, diba? And if that's again like Freshie was saying, diba, if relationship at home is not well, that actually kind of goes into different areas of our life. So that is something that we can actually help with. Then that's great. Ano pa? And also for our our other US based or US educated counterparts who actually are serving in multicultural communities, neighborhoods, and want to serve their patients better by learning more about the culture, then we're also would be a great resource. So you were saying,
The
Ben?
general meeting is open to all
All.
APTA members and non-APTA members. So that we're just really trying to expand the pool. In the future, past that meeting, hopefully we'll be able to show what it is, and maybe we can, give enough understanding for folks to think maybe something's interesting to them to even become a part of the catalyst group because of that. But for the general meeting, we just would like to open up to everybody just so that there's no barrier and we can get all your input.
Yeah, when I was at the summit recently, what I noticed echoing in my ear was the word belonging. Everybody wants to belong, and I have to say, to a certain extent, okay, yeah, I can actually attest and I can agree to that because when we were kami before, parang nga wala kami masyado nakikita. 'Di ba? So we're like, okay, APTA, may mga concerns. Hindi pa naman ako American citizen, pwede ba ako mag-member? Hindi naman ako taga dito, 'di ba? Kasi okay, hindi ko pa alam kung ano yung status ko. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. If you are part of the PT profession, then you're part of APTA, whether you know it or not, whether you're a member or not, because the APTA influences your practice. So please, come out. And there's really at this point, there's no more I guess reason not to feel belong or not to have that sense of belonging because may mga kamukha na kayo at this point.
I'm sure mas cute kayo sa amin. That's why we need more folks there,
So you're younger, you're this and that, but we're all in this together. So that's basically the message.
When is the assembly again?
August 18th.
August 18th.
Yeah, August 18th at 8 p.m. EDT.
All right, 8 p.m. EDT 10. We're gonna post that.
5 p.m. Pacific.
All right, kita-kits mga and sa mga nanonood. And again, thank you everyone for joining, and thank you everyone who's watching still. And hopefully you join us in our next handaan, mga nanonood. So again, everyone have a good day and night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.